Hi there, I'm Adam Michael Rowe and I'm a professional voice actor. It's weird to think about, but I've been active for about 10 years now, and it's got me reflecting on my career. About 7 years ago, I moved myself down to Texas, and I've been working extensively with Crunchyroll, Okatron 5000, Studio Nano, all the good anime stuff down here. My career has mainly been anime, but I've also done video games and narration. I've gotten to act in some pretty big things too, My Hero Academia, One Piece, Dragon Ball, Attack on Titan, Spy Family, just to name a few. But as I approach a decade of working, I wanted to go back and reflect on some of my favorite roles, give them a little bit of love, just share what they mean to me. A lot of these characters actually aren't like very big or meaningful in the grand scheme of things, but they are important to me in some way, and I'm excited to share exactly how. Excuse the noise, I'm also raising a Digimon. I'm also a very good parent. A couple things before we get into it, because this happens anytime a voice actor does anything. No, I cannot make you a voice actor. No, I cannot get you a job at Crunchyroll. No, I cannot introduce you to Goku. I am sorry. But I will share some information and some links in the description for any prospective voice actors. Kira Buckland's Voice Acting Club is a great resource, great way to get started. Casting Call Club is a great way to audition for some simple projects, some of them paid, but a great way to actually get some practice in. And then they have Closing Credits, which is their educational branch, very affordable class options. Red Scythe 2 is also a good option to get some affordable classes in. And there's a lot of great acting coaches and stuff out there, so take a look around. And all of this is remote, so you don't have to be in a major acting hub in order to actually get to do this stuff. But with that, let's take a trek down memory lane and reflect on some of my favorite characters.
What does that mean?
That was strange.
Grayville de Bleu, the one that started it all for me, my very first professional acting role. What a delightful character, just this egotistical, pompous, really funny jerk. I loved playing him. Also, I'm starting to grow my hair out for the first time, so maybe if I get long enough, I can actually grow out my own drill. Grayville is difficult for me to listen to now, though, because at that time, so I grew up acting. But then for a few years in my adult life, it seemed like acting wasn't in the cards for me, so I hadn't done it in a while. My health also took a turn for the worse. My mental health took a turn for the worse. So I kind of got the role out of nowhere. And so when I got this role, gosh, I was not in the best acting shape. If I voiced the character now, I would make many of the same decisions, except, well, simply my technique would be better. But getting that role was a great catalyst for me. It made me realize that this is ultimately what I want to do with my life, so it really inspired me to get in better health overall, and I am doing so much better now. So yeah, short story, I don't think Grayville is my best acting by any means, but man, I am just so grateful for what he has done to me and for what that opportunity opened up for me. Hello, little squirrel. Also, there's a lot of anime characters that are a lot like Grayville, and I would love to voice them. I've never gotten a chance to really pull out my Grayville again, so to speak.
No, that was merely pretense.
What does that mean?
He likely ran off in a different direction to tease you. I'm sure he went back home ahead of you.
Dude, have you ever met a dog?
That's just how they are.
If you know my career at all, you knew this one was coming. Daisuke Kanbei, the millionaire detective. Balance unlimited. After Grayville, I trained hard for 3 years and moved myself to Crunchyroll, and pretty shortly after moving, I got the Millionaire Detective. I won't deny, I didn't expect anything that big when I first moved here, especially because a certain pandemic was happening, so there wasn't any in-studio stuff happening, and remote recording wasn't yet quite the thing that it would become. But learning that I'm the title character, that was a pretty big deal. And what an experience that was, because, you know, Daisuke is kind of like the anti-Grayville. Grayville was super big, super dramatic, super loud. I could really rely on that. Daisuke, however, is not that. Daisuke is super calm, super reserved, kind of snarky, and so I had to perform within certain limitations. I needed to be able to express, you know, a whole spectrum of emotions and things, but in a very, very small spectrum of actual expression. After being able to be so big with Grayville, this was a unique exercise, and I feel like I succeeded. And it gave me the confidence to realize that I can carry a series, I can do acting heavy lifting, and just the simple fact that I got to help lead a series, that did a lot of good stuff for my career. Although because it was during the pandemic, it was also kind of weird and it also kind of hurt me in a way. For example, I think if The Millionaire Detective came out not during the pandemic, I probably would have gotten to meet a lot more people, would have gotten to network more, probably would have gotten to go to conventions, because The Millionaire Detective, while like it had its time and went, like it was pretty huge when it was running. But because of the life circumstances, that affected everybody, it kind of existed in a weird little bubble. And like because of that, like even though it was a huge stepping stone for my career, it wasn't as big as it could have been, I feel. Once things began to open back up and anime voice actors in the Dallas area began to go in studio again, it's a little bit like all that remote stuff never existed, like it never mattered. I had some pretty good supporting roles after Daisuke, but once we went in studio, I went right back to simple bits and walla, started right from the get-go. And I was very privileged to get to come in and like have main characters right away. But I guess in that sense, sort of having to go back to step one and grow back, that overall made me a better actor. My Digimon just digivolved right after I got finished saying that. But yeah, super grateful to have gotten to voice Daisuke. What a character. I just feel like there's an alternate reality where the pandemic didn't happen and I got to go to conventions and make more actual connections and maybe speed the career up a bit. So as I finished that part, I actually just got called in for some voice work. I was planning to really get all this done today, but I guess I'll check back in a little bit later. Hi gang, I'm back. It's the same day, I'm just freshly showered and I'm actually in the Crunchyroll parking garage right now. I'm glad that happened because that is an excellent example of what can really happen when you're a voice actor. Sometimes things move fast and you've got to be ready to act. This isn't usually how it is. Usually they try to let us know like a day or two before, sometimes even longer. But every once in a while, just they got a part that needs to be filled and they need it that day, so they call you up and see if you're available. There, I turned the light on. Maybe that's a little bit better, but I want to talk about My Hero Academia and specifically my drill villain.
Oh, come on! Enough! Take a nap!
I call him Drill Villain because he doesn't have an actual name as far as I know, but My Hero Academia is one of my favorite anime, so it was a huge deal for me when I got called in for this session. And though he's not a named character or very important in the long run, man, he got a pretty cool, solid scene in Hero League Baseball, so I'm really happy to have, like, gotten, like, something that I could really play with. Also, he's a lot of, like, action efforts, fighting, grunts, things like that. There is a specific part where, he gets thrown up into the air spinning, and I am so proud of the noise that I made when that happened. A part of me kind of hoped that that would lead to me maybe getting like a more important named character in the series, but unfortunately that never happened. But still, how often do you actually get to be in your favorite show and actually get to do something that's pretty beefy? So I can't complain. I did get to come back for Vigilantes. I voiced Koichi's boss off screen, and I also got to voice some of the bomber villains, so that was cool. But I need to head into my session, so I'm gonna go do that, and I will report back in with another character when I get a chance. Again, gang, I just got back home from my session. We're gonna do one more character, then I'll call it a night and come back tomorrow with more.
Hey, you losers better not get too cocky. Just watch yourselves. Spend too much time dreaming about being on top, and you'll end up buried. That's right. Keep having fun picking on small-time game. That's all you get.
This is another one of those characters that doesn't have a name, but I got to play a Saiyan in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, specifically the Bardock DLC. So I've already worked with Okatron a few times, mainly on the Ultraman series, but this was my first video game with them. Also, just my first big video game in general. Also my first step into Dragon Ball, so that's also a pretty big deal. Now, I expected to mainly just go in and do efforts like fighting type stuff, grunts, hits, things like that. And I did do that, but as you saw from the clip, I also just got a pretty good scene. I got to call out and tease Bardock's crew. And that's happened to me before. Sometimes I'm called in for like a nameless role that's not really that big of a deal and maybe not important to the story, but for whatever reason, the writers just gave them a lot of good stuff and you end up with a really good scene out of it. Those are the ones that I know aren't necessarily gonna like shoot my career forward, but they're really, really good for demo reels. You'll see that even in some of my recent demo reels. Sometimes I've actually decided to pass on named characters because I thought I got to, I don't know, actually show off my acting better with a nameless role.
Evan, follow me to the bottom of the tower.
What? The bottom of the tower? Are you out of your mind? Have you forgotten the royal family's warning?
He's the first irregular since Uric. This is gonna be huge.
Enjoy it by yourself then. I'm just a citizen and I want to keep my head on my shoulders.
So, I am actually back at Crunchyroll because 2 days in a row I got called in last minute. As I've said before, this doesn't usually happen, but I'm happy about it. This is also just a very good representation of like acting in general because peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows. 1 week, a whole bunch of things that never happens, and then for like 3 more weeks, nothing will happen. But Evan Edroke from Tower of God, New World. This guy is super important to me for many reasons. First, the story of how I got the role. So, Tower of God, New World was produced by Mark Grau Recording Studios in California, and I actually have very little connection in the California market. Most of my stuff is in the Dallas area. I was just browsing social media on my lunch, and I happened upon a casting call that were my exact specs, so I sent in my visual reel and forgot about it. Minutes later, I saw that the person who posted it friended me, and so I opened up my DMs and we got talking and they offered me the part immediately. This was wild to me because I've been in Dallas toiling at Crunchyroll and the other anime studios trying to get something bigger, and then lo and behold, I get something pretty huge effortlessly just because I happen to have the right stuff, the right, what's the phrase? Luck is preparation meets opportunity, and I was prepared for this. And so I got my first major video game role and my first mobile game role and my first gacha game role. And then we have Evan the character. I love Evan because as an actor, sometimes you have to figure characters out, you know, little affectations, their psychology. A lot of the times I don't actually get to use my like regular voice or like my regular affectations. So like with Evan, like that performance is very much Adam Rowe. And he has lots of delightful layers to him. It can be kind of whiny, kind of wimpy, but he's like Yuri's caretaker. He helps navigate her through the tower and everything. And he's also a bit of a secret badass. I don't know if it's actually true still, but when the game came out, he was actually one of the best characters. But yeah, voicing him was such a delight. Getting cast as that opened up new venues for me as an actor, and just the entire experience was just so positive. It is one of my absolute best voice acting memories. So this one's a bit of a cop-out because it's not technically one character, but goblins from Goblin Slayer. So for season 2, I was called in for a Wallace session, and I realized I didn't get specific with this for anyone not in the industry. So bits means like bit characters, just very brief, maybe 1 or 2 lines. And Walla means like group work. You know, 4 of us go into a booth and we might be background people at a mall or soldiers in a battle, but it gives life to the world. But anyway, I was called in for a Walla session for Goblin Slayer, and the director was very impressed by my goblin noises. In fact, it got me called back for the Goblin Shaman and the Goblin Cleric in the same season. And while these might not be like big named roles, because of how good of a job I did, that director started calling me in for more and more creature work. And then he spread the word, and other directors began calling me in for more creature work, and it became a bit of a specialty of mine. It got me a lot of work. The funny thing is, I'm not even like formally trained in creature work or anything like that. The honest truth is, I think I'm good at making creature sounds because of D&D and tabletop RPGs. When I would run a game, my players would be up against creatures and, I'd want to give them interesting sounds and really give them life. Also, D&D and tabletop RPGs are just really good for your improvisational skills, so that's wonderful as an actor. But yeah, I kind of honed this acting skill without even really meaning to do so. And since then, I've expanded into other creatures: goblins, hobgoblins, orcs, slimes, gargoyles. I've been a few earth golems, elementals, things like that. Regular animals, dragons. I think I was like an alligator man once. I think I was also like a, not a jackal, whatever you call like the wolf dog people in a lot of fantasy stuff. I think kobolds or gnolls. But anyway, voicing those goblins gave me something that made me kind of special and ended up getting me a lot more work, and that's how it goes sometimes. We're actually going to come back to another creature a little later.
I'm the great merchant Butagali, and I'm known by 2 titles. One is the prophet. The other is the merchant of death. Want to know the secret to becoming obscenely wealthy? Let me tell you. Buy low and sell high. That is the simple truth of business.
Butagalian, from Headhunted to Another World. He may not be the biggest character, and his show is not the biggest show, and yet he might be my favorite character I've ever voiced and my personal favorite performance of mine. So Butagalian is, at least at first glance, this scheming, slimy pigman merchant. He's greedy and money-grubbing and just out to serve himself. But then, spoilers, he's not. He actually does business with people in need and adopts war orphans and takes care of them. So what makes him very special to me is that this character has layers that we actually get to peel back. I've gotten to play some pretty cool characters, but at the end of the day, they were maybe kind of 1 or 2 dimensional. You don't really get to dive into their story or get to really see a lot of different layers of them. Butagalian, not the case. For about 2 episodes, you run into people who are affected by his business practices. And then he finally gets an entire episode where he shares his entire philosophy about doing business and taking all you can and everything. And then that all gets turned on his head, and he pulls back the veil and reveals who he truly is and kind of turns over a new leaf. Like I said, he actually was secretly a decent person all along, but now he quits working in the shadows, and he puts his good up front. But yeah, simply because he was such a fun character to play, and he had such a good full arc that I haven't gotten to experience very often as an actor. He is just so dear to my heart, and frankly, I just think I did a damn good job. I think I killed the role. Sometimes as an actor, you look back at your old work and you're like, Butagalian, I look back at and I'm like, hell yeah.
First Aoi, and now Ikari too. 1 left. I'm surely next. We should have known better than to ever meddle with Enzo Ashia. He killed them, but no way in hell am I gonna die from some curse!
Next, we have Muneharu Murata from Amaku MD, Dr. Detective. I was called in for a Walla session, and the character briefly made an appearance at the end of an episode. They did not yet know he was a named character or would become more important. So it was literally just heavy breathing after he and a team he was with made a discovery. However, the character did end up becoming important for a few more episodes, and as you can see, the character is in his 70s, and I am not. Usually at Crunchyroll, they try to cast you as authentically as possible, so if there is an elderly character, they usually try to call in an elderly voice actor. Except for Bits and Walla. If there's a brief old man in something, they'll let younger actors play those. So anyway, the director calls me in for this character, explains to me that he didn't know the character was gonna be bigger and probably should have cast an older actor for the role, but figured since I already did it for that bit, decides to give me a chance. Anyway, I do my best old man, and he says I stand corrected and I get to keep the role. Similarly to the Goblin Slayer story, that proved to him that I can voice old men, so he started getting called in for more old men. This is also a spoiler, but the character dies, and, dying a slow, painful death as an old man, it was very intense, and that session actually messed up my throat a little bit. The things we do for showbiz. But this is something that happens to me frequently. I end up kind of accidentally getting a role through a bit. The director kind of doubts if I'm the right choice for the role, but then I end up killing it. This will come up again in this list.
This foolish, hideous world of yours. I'll shatter it to pieces. Every single layer.
This is a small role, but Ricade from... oh god. I may be a guild receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time, I think. Here's an unrelated story. So I have been in so many isekai, and they all have the same long naming convention. Because of that, anytime I have to remember what show I'm in, my brain goes through the entire catalog of shows I've been in and can never think of any of them. That time I got reincarnated, reborn as the strongest something in another world, Atelier. Anyway, back on topic. Ricade is this whimsical jester man who is actually evil and is part of... I don't fully remember the context, but he's part of some evil group that's attacking people. And while he's a fairly small role, he was just pure fun for me. I desperately want to play more villains and more weird characters, and he's exactly that. They're just so much fun. This foolish, hideous world of yours, I'll shatter it to pieces, every single layer. He gets murdered immediately in a very fun way. But yeah, I'd like to do that just more long term.
If I had a heart, it would be filled with warmth knowing I get to face you all again. Hello, dearies.
The Demon Lord from the Unaware Atelier Meister. Similarly to Ricade, this is also a villain role. But credit where it's due, Christian Eros actually voiced this character earlier in the show, but was unable to do so for the finale, so they brought me in to voice match. But then they decided not to have me voice match and just have me do my own thing, so I did. And even though this performance is only a stand-in, I am so proud of this performance, and going back to Ricade, it's more of that fun, just devious villain that I hope to do a lot more of. But I get the whole episode, I get to do villain monologues, I get to attack, I get to be a threat, I get to make demon noises, he does a laugh like Then it kind of takes a turn and it actually gets played for laughs, and that's also pretty fun. But just, I had so much fun with that character, and I hope that one day that, you know, rather than, you know, a voice match or a stand-in, I get considered for that kind of character first. Let's cross our fingers and manifest evil, friends. I mean, fun cartoon evil, of course, not real life evil.
I wrote down the wrong date, so it turns out we need to finalize the rest of the trip details right now.
I called it! Every class has their plan sorted out except ours!
We'll start by splitting up boys and girls into groups of 2 or 3. Then, I don't know, merge boy groups and girl groups to make groups of 5 or 6, whatever.
This man doesn't care.
The homeroom teacher from You and I Are Polar Opposites. I love it when they actually cast me as somebody my age. Despite being my age, it doesn't happen as often as you think. I feel like I have to fight to play characters that are actually my type, my age, and that's why I love this teacher. This poor guy is so tired, so dead inside. I've made the joke that he's like Aizawa from My Hero's less cool cousin. But he's just so much fun because there's so much pretense that I don't have to put on. Listen, I'm 38. Sometimes I'm tired, I don't feel so good, allergies are bugging me, and it can be a bit difficult to sound really good and really clean. So a guy like this, where I can go in tired and just sick of everything, and that's exactly what it needs, I love that. My director once said to me with this character, "You are such a good grown man sick of all the anime bullshit." And I know she was talking about the character, but I can't help but also feel like she was talking about me. There's a very similar character that I almost put on this list, Conrad from Mushoku Tensei. He's a mage and he shows up for a few episodes, and very similar energy. You know, this tired older guy, very informal, but more or less the same energy, so I didn't feel the need to, like, really, you know, do this twice. But yes, I also enjoy playing tired, worn out adults like this, and hope I get to do more.
What the?
Dragon, from an adventurer's daily grind at age 29. Friends, this character feels like the culmination of all the stories I have just told you. This is another character that I got on accident that I wasn't necessarily intended for, and yet somehow ended up killing. For some context, the director thought they were calling me in to voice an actual dragon. However, the character dragon is not a dragon. He's a cute little baby bird. I don't know if you know this, but I sound like this. I got to thinking, oh, maybe it's ironic. Maybe he'll evolve into a bigger form that fits me more. Or maybe I'll have an inner monologue and it'll be funny. No, he's just a cute little guy that makes cute little bird noises, exactly like I don't sound. So I spent the next 24 hours practicing cute little bird noises. Now, I just got done saying I have a lot of creature experience, but cute little guys, they're usually voiced by ladies. People with already higher voices who can really easily, make high-pitched creature voices. So, baptism by fire, I came up with this. But thanks to that very stressful 24 hours, I can now add cute little guys to my creature repertoire. And that character was my first series-long regular character since The Millionaire Detective. My life is a comedy. And much like the Goblin Slayer thing, that has gotten me called in for more work than I never expected. I think it's just people love the novelty of a noise like coming out of a guy like me. But hey, I got work. Who am I to complain? But I think we'll call it here. This was fun, reflecting on almost a decade of my life. Voice acting has absolutely had its challenges, but I try to regularly remember that a lot of people don't get to do this, and a lot of people would kill to be in my shoes. So I remind myself that even through the challenges, I am so happy to be here and so happy to be doing what I love. But this was fun, and if you'd like to see me do more videos like this, I guess let me know in the comments. If you want to check out more of my work and everything, you can visit adammichaelrowe.com, and on socials, I'm Adam Michael Rowe on Blue Sky. And if you're interested in working together professionally, you can contact my agents at Pastorini Bosby Talent Agency. Be well, my friends.